everyone. Welcome to the May 21st Hingham School Committee meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:31 p.m. And welcome to everyone. We do not have minutes to approve this week, correct, Kay? Everyone has the minutes for review. So if you have any comments to make, please get them back to Kay. We'll have them for approval at our next meeting. Agenda item number 3 are questions and comments. Audience comments are welcome, and we have set aside time at the beginning of the meeting for any audience comments. I will read the rules around that if anyone has any comments in the audience. No? All right. Then we will move on to agenda item 4, Superintendent's Report.
Thank you. So a couple of pieces of news. One is that last Sunday, not yesterday, but last Sunday, there was an article in Globe South, and it was food services and healthy lunches and good nutrition and so on. And one of the communities featured, and the community that had the most photos actually was Hingham and Plymouth River School. So it's kind of hard to copy that for all of you. So it's on a poster board over there on the last poster boards if you want to take a look at it. But kudos to to Kim Smith, who's a food services director, for those of you who don't know her, and students at Plymouth River School. So 2 kids eating some interesting lunches, and it was a very good article. Also, we have some good news in terms of some financial support from the East School PTO that we want to acknowledge. And John?
We'll be back when he's making copies.
Oh, he's making copies of it. So anyway, we've had a hard time ever since that building was built in trying to get grass over there in any large area for playground. And the kids have the smaller playground that's very attractive, but when we have students out for recess, typically it's a whole grade level and can be, 79, 80 kids that are there at any one time. We've tried putting down grass seed and trying to close off half of the space so the kids would have some place to play and some place to let the grass grow, and that hasn't been terribly successful because partly because it's hard to keep kids off it with 2 full growing seasons, and also partly because there was not water there, sprinkled water. So you have an email that's in your packet that John wrote to me summarizing that he had a meeting last week with the PTO who've been very anxious about this and very willing to be a big part of the solution, both in the short and the long term. So John, I'm trying to explain about the
East School PTO and grass.
Good news.
Okay.
Yes. So
Okay.
you know more about specifically what they're going to do, but they certainly have stepped up to the plate, and we are very appreciative and should note their efforts. So
Yes. So I had a meeting with the East School PTO, and so we've struggled with the field at East School for a number of years. We got some capital money a few years ago, and we split the field into sections to get some grass to grow. The first section, we only let it sit a year, and then we opened that up, and then we planted the second section. But the first section has really deteriorated a lot. And the PTO, it has in fact frustrated them. They brought in a couple of experts, Barcelos and Kane, as well as Rad, to sort of look at it, and everybody seemed to, they said in order to grow grass you're going to have to irrigate it. So they have in fact, they went out and got some quotes for an irrigation system. This wouldn't be one as elaborate as we did at the middle school, to the tune of $250,000, but one that's under $20,000. They got some quotes, so it would be irrigating the 2 fields. I call them 2. It's really 1 right behind the playground, but there's a sort of the left side and the right side because we split them when we first grew grass. The second section we let sit for 2 years, and that section has started to establish the base. Nobody's been on it, but the first section, which we did, we have to redo that. And then there's another sort of, we want to call a third section, which would be sort of up in the hill. So the plan would really be to put in the irrigation. We wouldn't cut underneath the driveway. We would do a curb cut, and would put sort of a speed bump in so the pipes could be held, be safe, during the sort of the watering season, but those pipes could be removed during the winter. So it would remove the speed bump during the winter time, and blow out the irrigation system. The PTO has also said that they'll allocate $750 a year for maintenance of it, which would really be to blow out the system.
So they volunteered to pay for the irrigation?
They did volunteer to pay for the irrigation.
Yeah.
And the quotes, I mean, there's the irrigation, so there's the installation of the irrigation, the curb cut, the connection that goes to the building, and then there's a plumber that's involved too. And the plumber would have to bring a line out to the outside of the building, that's capable of servicing the irrigation system. They came up with quotes, around $13,000, $14,000, but we know they'll be a little bit higher. And what they did want to do was sort of, I wanted to make sure I told the committee of it. This is a gift that's lower than $20,000 for the most part. So Dot and I could accept it, but I wanted to make the committee aware of it because I think it's a good idea. Let's see. I think what we'll do is we'll get the irrigation going, and then we'll open up these fields, but we'll have to have a rotation plan. So, we're talking, I met with Dr. Ed last week, we're talking, so in the fall, field 2, if 1 was the first one, field 2 was the one that's established for 2 years now, that may be open in the fall, along with the parking lot, really. Because C is actually showing signs of wear too, and C was never meant to be a field, but the kids have been playing on it. But we think that if we do some slice seeding up there over the fall and give that another season, that in the spring we could open that up so they could use B and C, and then what we do is in the fall, that first field we originally did, we'll redo that. Either if we have to bring in some loam, we'll bring in some loam. Otherwise, we'll chop it up and slice seed it so that we can get a base going. And then that's got to sit for 2 years. We know for sure they've got to sit for 2 years. And then get a cycle going. So I think, and the PTO, they want to do this. The board wants to sort of make sure the vote happens this year to allocate the funds and to allocate the maintenance on a go-forward basis. So I thought it was a very good meeting, and I think it's worth a shot. And I think, it's going to take some time, but I think eventually we will be able to get a grass base going at East School.
Okay, great. Any questions?
That's very generous of the East PTO to do that. That's great. Who would be responsible for maintaining the fields, for fertilizing, all the maintenance that goes into the field itself? Would that be the PTO or would it be the town?
No, that would be us. That would be the schools. We would, put it under a maintenance program where we, and we do it now. We try to seed and fertilize on an annual basis. Maybe more than once. Okay. The seeding will be our piece. So, that redoing that first field that we did, that will be, on us. It may be $5,000. But I think that it's important that we get the plan going, and I think that with the irrigation we got a better shot of growing some grass. And once you get a good base established, then with a rotation, I think it'll hold. We have other fields that don't have irrigation, but they hold up, right? Because they're rotated and they have a good base. I think that first section that we did, it was just premature. You can't put somebody on it a year after you plant grass.
Right. But so to Carrie's point, so the landscaping costs won't
There'll
be a
be
significant increase to what we're already doing.
No, they'll be, and they'll be on us. But they'll pay $750 to sort of blow out the irrigation, and any extra, they'll give us that. So if there's any extra to that, we could use some. But, we have the equipment to do some slice seeding, and we have a contract with South Shore Country Club, which are good favorable rates. Because we use them town services. So put it together with the whole fields of grounds plan for the system. It won't kill us. We'll make it.
Anyone else? All right, good.
Thanks,
John.
METCO update. We have posted the METCO opening. We'll look for some other nearby places to post in addition to the School Spring where we post for everything. We have interest from the PPI, which is the Parent Partnership Initiative, to be involved in the interviewing and some candidates who will be willing to do that, and also Andrew has identified a couple of high school students that could be part of the interviewing for the next process, so that's all good news. We met, actually, John and I met with Andrew today, because once we've had the elementary scheduling meeting where we determine how many sections of everything we're going to have, we look at the numbers in the elementary schools, particularly grade 1 and grade 2, which is where we like to start people, and we identify where we think we can comfortably add students. And so there will be 9 new students this year. That's a combination of the students who are graduating. I think there are only 4 or 5 of them, and then replacing them with students coming in. And then, as you heard from Andrew's report, we're trying to, over a period of time, maybe 5 years, get to a total of 50. We've been at 40 for many, many years, but we think that given our the enrollments that we have and our want to be able to expand to all 4 of the elementary schools, that doing a couple of additional a year will do that for us. So we made those decisions this morning, and we'll get that information out to the principals, and then Andrew's responsibility will be to work with Metro Central, where they keep the folders of student applicants, and we'll be able to identify. We have 2 students coming along who will be younger siblings of students we already have, so we always give that kind of a situation a priority. So things are moving along, and we're hoping to, now that we've completed our other administrative search that you're going to talk about a little bit later this evening, this is our next big priority in terms of hiring. We've already hired a number of other filled a number of other vacancies, and I'm going to mention something about that when we talk about the budget. The Leading the Nation, there were in all 16 different PSAs, public service announcements. They were all over there. I think what was written was great. I think we featured on some things that really are part of who we are here, and if you haven't read the one about the track team at the high school, the unified track team at the high school, you have to read that one, and the picture is great. So we had some logistical problems, as some of you have heard me say many times. X2 is not a particularly friendly way to communicate, friendly in terms of either attachments or links that you may want to embed. It just doesn't always behave the same way. We all struggled with that. So we don't quite know how to put, these are on the website, that's fine, but we don't know yet how we are going to communicate back to DESE. So this was what we did. We wanted to share it with you. We'll talk about that on Friday when we have our last all-town PTO, but particular appreciation to people who worked very quickly, all-town PTO folks who were responsible for 3 of these, and also for the logo, Josh Ross for the logo, and then the 6 principals who in a very challenging week last week got these up and out, and so it was a good effort. We think we could have done something different had we had more time, but we're happy with this effort. So they're there for now, so if anyone has great ideas about how further we could share them, we can email them to anyone, and I think Liza, you had a thought of sending them over to town hall, maybe to the selectmen or whatever, because they talk about good news. But any other thoughts about where we might want to put these, we would appreciate.
Okay. Thank you so much to our PTOs who are doing a lot of stuff, as always, for the schools. Right, item 5 is communications. So we have some communications received by the superintendent.
In your packet is the METCO schedule for the coming year. We haven't really even finished, or maybe we did last week, MCAS for this year, but we already have a schedule for another year, so that's just an FYI item. We also included a packet that typically is sent home to parents and students, senior students and their parents, that suggests all kinds of events that are going on this week and next week, and that some of you may want to attend. The Senior Athletic Award Night is always a great night, and this will be the first one, of course, for Jim, but we expect good things there. The senior awards night last year, and each year for the last few years, over $350,000 in local scholarship money is handed out. That's a special night. And of course, the ceremony on June 2nd. And I would ask that you make sure to let the school know if you're coming to the graduation. Most school committee members do, but so that they'll have appropriate seating set aside. And the ceremony starts at 5, and the students have to be there at 4:15, and typically school committee comes a bit earlier as well. And Michelle will have awards.
Yes,
carefully crafted
I will
for
have,
that,
yes.
for that event. So a lot of
Hadn't done
good
that.
things going on. The kindergarten enrollment for September right now stands at 269 students. There are probably another 6 to 8 that are outstanding that we don't have the full packet back, but we anticipate that. We have, I think it's only 3 total retentions, although another one may have popped up today. Last year we had a larger number of retentions, and all of them could be explained by very unique situations for some children that have very unique needs. But this year we're back to what our typical retention pattern would be, which would be 3 or 4 youngsters. So we could get to 275, but right now we're at 269 and have planned accordingly. The good news is that the amount of revenue that we expect, because we have actual deposits and obviously commitment to pay, the revenue is in excess of what we put in the budget as an offset. So that's one of the things that has allowed us to close the budget gap, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a while. I know there's interest in terms of when we will have the report about numbers of 5-year-olds versus numbers of 6-year-olds. But as I said a couple of weeks ago, our priority right now is getting all of the youngsters who are coming to kindergarten enrolled in the proper places, and finally determining who is where. And so the principals, the commitment that they've made is that before August 1st, we will be able to have that report breakdown of how many students are age 5 in enrollment, how many are age 6, and what we think the difference will be as compared with what the pattern has been over the last few years. So no promises, but certainly we promise to get the report done so people can look at it and compare. Let's see, what else? So Carlos, you had sent us an email about a possible proposal, and so
yeah, we'll be discussing that at the subcommittee report.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you.
good.
We'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. All right, so that's your communications. 5.2 would be our student communications, but Emma Quilty can't be here tonight. She had said there wasn't much to report other than all of the senior events that are happening over the next 2 weeks at the high school. Other communications, 5.3, everyone received their school committee, subcommittee, and liaison appointments for this year. They are or will be posted on the school committee website.
I think they are there.
They are there? Okay, so they are already there. So for anyone at home or in the audience who would like to look at them, I won't read them all, but does anyone have any questions, discussion about the assignments? No? Okay, great, thank you. Item 6.1, to receive an update on the school committee safety resolution and related matters. Carlos had put together the resolution. We had voted on it at our last meeting, and we have forwarded it to the Hingham High School Student Council, and they're going to vote on whether or not to adopt it as well at their meeting on June 1st. And Nicole Piantes will get back to us and let us know whether or not that passed their student council. And I also forwarded it to the Board of Selectmen and to see if they would like to join it as well, but I have not heard back from them yet, but I'll report back if we hear back from them.
And I will mention it at the leadership team meeting that is this Thursday, and see if we can get a school department leadership vote as well.
Okay, great, thank you. Item 7.1, new business, to hear a presentation on the superintendent search process from our guest Glenn Koocher from the Mass Association of School Committees. Right there, if that's okay, at that podium. Thank you for joining us tonight.
It's not a microphone, but it's just for the TV.
Can we move this?
Okay.
This
Oh,
one here.
Which one?
that's fine. This is
Or-
work.
We just move it up to his podium.
Yeah.
Sorry.
This seems to be on.
We're just gonna move it up on here. So that
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, members of the school committee, ladies and gentlemen, frequently school districts that are looking for superintendents ask us to come in and talk to them about different elements of the search process, what the environment is like, what the process can be like. To just start off, I call your attention to this document which we produced for the general public as well as school committees. Tells you what you need to think about as you start looking for a superintendent. This is the absolute best time of the year to be having this conversation, because you have more than a year to expedite your transition. You're in the fortunate position of being in a very good district with a very desirable environment in which to work, and the superintendent who is retiring quite honorably, so that the next superintendent will not have to come in here and clean up a mess. The next superintendent can take a high-performing district and continue to help it perform and exceed expectations. So it's a very enviable position, and I think that it's a position that will attract people who would like to come here. To be very blunt, the school committee has enormous discretion in how it wishes to conduct a search. For example, tonight, the superintendent search process is on the agenda. You can appoint me right now to be your next superintendent effective next July. That's how much discretion you have. It would be an act of political malpractice, obviously, but the school committee has... There's no requirement for a process. There's no requirement to involve the community. There's just a matter that the school committee votes in public for someone to be the next superintendent. But many school committees want to think about what their community expects from them. They want to go out and find out what the community is looking for. The school committee needs to think about what its goals and objectives are and what its decision criteria would be in the next superintendent, and that's why this is a great time to start. A couple of things about process. I joke about this, but the school committees always beat the superintendents in softball because school committees are always more interested in outcome than process. The superintendent search process, depending upon how much of it you want, can be expeditious or it can be overwhelming. But there are certain things that communities expect. The school committee needs to think about whether it would like to conduct its own search or whether they would like to have somebody help them do it, or whether they'd like technical assistance in how they manage the search process. There are school committees that do their own searches and do them quite successfully without spending any money, and they're very successful at it with technical assistance that's available to you if you wish. Then there are school committees that seek guidance. But part of that guidance is planning your timetable so that you can have a decision made, you could reasonably have a decision made by the winter holidays and have 6 months of transition. You could involve the community in several ways. First of all, the law does not allow the school committee to engage in any executive session processes related to searching for a superintendent, except very, very limited issues around referencing at the end of the process. So in order to have a pool of candidates, you need to organize a search committee, which the law does permit to engage in a confidential initial screening and interview. And a search committee may have members of the school committee, but not a majority. So this school, you could have 3 members of your school committee on the search committee and still be within the law. There are 2 schools of thought, by the way, about school committee members on search committees, and I am one of those who believes that, without question, the school committee should be represented on the search committee. They can be there to watch to make sure that the school committee's goals and objectives for the search are carried out, and that your process doesn't get hijacked by many other interests in the community. I say that because when a vacancy takes place, the faculty immediately mobilizes to have the greatest influence in the process. The community may mobilize to have influence on the process. Various special interests will mobilize, and it's up to the school committee to create a search committee that represents a diverse cross-section of interests and community members. The larger the search committee, the longer it takes to expedite your work, because that's a lot of schedules to reconcile. So 9 to 11 members of a search committee, occasionally 13 members, is a workable number. But just think about what happens if the committee gets too big. You suddenly show up to organize the search committee, which would take place sometime in October, early October. The school committee would probably have identified its goals for the next superintendency during the summer, your decision criteria, your compensation package, you'd get that organized. Then starting in September, you would recruit and appoint a search committee representing the different interests in the community. Again, we would strongly recommend that the members of the community not be outnumbered by the members of the faculty on the search committee. There are lots of reasons for that. I'll be happy to talk about that, but just so that you have a sort of a majority of the residents and community members of Hingham, because they're the ones that will be here for a very long time, and it's their children whose issues are at stake. And they also tend to be objective about the concerns of parents. So the search committee would be oriented, and then you get the people at a meeting. And suddenly, you get 13 members of the search committee, and somebody says, well, I work in Boston, I can't get here before 7 o'clock. And someone else says, and I, on the Board of Selectmen, I can't meet on Tuesdays. And then someone else says, my family responsibilities, I can't meet on Saturdays. And then someone says, and by the way, we go away for the 2nd week in October. And the next thing you know, it takes you 4 weeks to get your interviews done. So a smaller group is easier, but still, a search committee will be very helpful. In the meantime, your position has been posted. We recommend that you leave your position out there for 4 to 5 weeks. There are plenty of vehicles available to make sure that the universe of candidates becomes aware of your vacancy. Now, virtually everybody in the United States who is interested in coming to Massachusetts for a superintendency looks in at least 2 places that I can assure you are checked: the website of the Superintendents Association and the website of the School Committee Association. We get about 100,000 hits a year on our superintendent search page. The superintendents get about 1 million hits, but the superintendents put all of the positions in school districts that are out there. So you have principals and teachers and others looking for positions. That is, by the way, a service that any member district gets. So whatever you elect to do, your vacancy will be posted on our website and can be distributed to 52 state and territorial school boards associations, just as a courtesy as a member district. And the National Alliance of Superintendent Searchers is in 52 states and territories. they'll all know about it because you're a member of the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, regardless of who you have helping you with your search. So you have access to a national pool. You could choose to advertise in some national publications like Education Week. Newspaper advertising has virtually gone away for superintendent searching, although you might want to consider whoever covers you locally, because your community members and your faculty may be among your best recruiters. They're the people that get on the phone and call their friends and say, hey, this is the time to come back, or here's an opportunity that you might be interested in. There are also recruiting lists that are available to you to help you find your next superintendent. And people will know. And no one in the United States is more than 2 degrees of separation away from Hingham, because the superintendent in Macomb, Illinois, is going to call the director of his or her superintendent's association and say, or the head of the school board association, and say, call Tom Scott, call Glenn, and here are some things we want to know about the community. Why is the superintendent leaving? What's the compensation package like? What's the governance like? In other words, what is the school board like? They'll be thrilled that they don't have to go out and sell a bond budget every year to their county school board or school district. Massachusetts has a very smooth budgeting process. They might ask what the economics are like. They will ask whether or not there's a strong internal candidate, because that's the #1 factor discouraging people from coming out. If there's a strong internal candidate, sometimes they just don't want to compete against strong internal candidates. What we're finding is that candidates from out of state who want to come to Massachusetts essentially want to come back to Massachusetts, or they want to come back with whoever is the other adult in the household who's coming back. Very few people will pick up and leave and go to another state now, just because of the measure of instability. We had the 2008 economic decline was a shock to a lot of people, and because Massachusetts only permits 10 years of pension transferability, if you are at that point where your pension in another state is about to go like this, why would you want to leave here and come to Massachusetts and start over here again? Also, you have to accept the fact that the regulatory climate for schools in Massachusetts is probably the worst of any in the country, and no matter how good you are, somebody is going to find a way to give you less than a stellar grade for what you're doing. Someone will find fault with what you do, and it's just the curse of even some of the best school districts in Massachusetts that our accountability system is designed to be somewhat punitive and less constructive than we would like. That's known around the country, and to some people outside of the country, outside of the state, it's a problem. Here in Massachusetts, we understand regulation and punishment is our life, and we sort of put up with it as a cultural thing, and people are not daunted by it. Just another thing, though, that is a factor, and that is that, 30 years ago, if you were looking for a superintendent, he would have come, his family would have followed, and that would have been the story. Now, the superintendent who is coming is just as likely to be a female as a male, and there is invariably another adult in the household who is also looking for a good job. So you may be the superintendent of schools in a district somewhere else, and you're married to a principal or a physician or an attorney or somebody who just can't pick up and leave. So that's another reason that we don't see as much out-of-state movement as we do, but we do see it within New England. And because of what this district is, you also have the right to expect that this will be a destination superintendency, and that people will come here and stay here and not start looking for the next job 18 months after they arrive. So among the things you're going to be looking for when you look at candidates and talk to candidates is if this is a successful experience for you, will you still be here in 5 years? And it's very important that you ask questions like that. By the way, as a resource, we have samples of dozens of interviews and hundreds of draft questions in different topics that are available to just get some idea of how you conduct a good interview. They're available to any member district, so they're for you. So again, you make your selection of a search committee. I'm not saying this because the chair is here, but I always recommend that the chair of the school committee be the chair of the search committee. I'm sorry if it ruins your life for the next period of time.
Nobody told me that either.
Only because it solves the problem of who's appointing the, I don't know who appoints committees here, usually the chair does. You're going to want to cast a wide net in the community and among the faculty to see who would like to be on the search committee once you create it. And then you appoint the search committee however you do it. But the smoothest processes are the ones that have a submajority of the school committee and the chair of the school committee represented on the search committee, usually is the chair. But you can do it any way you like. There are no rules for this, other than that the search committee follows the open meeting law and the state ethics law. The search committee then receives your packets of candidates. We would strongly recommend that you require that the search committee see all the applications that have been provided to the district, and that the search committee can select from among those people who have applied so that they can determine whom they'd like to see. Usually the people who aggregate the applications will be happy to advise you on who the better candidates might be, but the search committee generally likes to see everything. Search committee then selects the candidates that they would like to interview and then moves forward to the school committee an appropriate number of candidates, but only those people who they would be prepared to see as your next superintendent. In other words, we tell a search committee, if you've interviewed, you get 30 applications, and let's say you interview 10 of them, and you select 3 to go forward to the school committee, and then somebody remembers, oh my God, we don't have a left-handed candidate. We got to have one. Let's go back into the pool and let's send that left-handed candidate forward. We're never going to hire that person, but let's move that person forward so we have at least a left-handed person. If you do that, you're doing a disservice, because once people are recommended to the school committee, their names become public. And it's no great shame to be a finalist and a public candidate for the superintendency of Hingham and not get the job. It's no great shame, but it's no great honor either. And you don't want to put those people through the process whom you're not prepared to have as your superintendent. Another challenge that we're finding now is that invariably in a pool of candidates, 1 or 2 of them is going to be stalked by a disgruntled former subordinate or a parent or somebody. I'll give you an example. If you've been a principal, if you've been a department head and you've counseled somebody out of the profession, if you've ever suspended or expelled a student from school, chances are those students and those parents or that teacher that you counseled out of the profession remembers your name and might be Googling you once a week just to see what you're up to. So that if you become a candidate for the superintendency in Hingham, they can call the entire school committee and say, Terry Jones from Muncie, Indiana is going to be a candidate there. You don't know how bad this person can be. And we're seeing internet stalking of candidates, and it has become actually a pretty significant issue. And it's been a great disservice to a lot of very, very talented administrators who've done the right thing and courageously made difficult decisions, only to find that the end users of those decisions follow them and become somewhat disgruntled. That's why candidates will not apply unless they can have an initial confidential screening. and then have an opportunity to explain to the school committee, somebody's going to tell you that Satan brought me here, but I'm going to explain that this is what really happened, and this is what this is what I am about, and not what you might see. There are people out there who can advise you on the story behind the story, and the school committee generally and its agents should be prepared to do some good reference checking, beyond just criminal records checking, but I mean good professional performance records checking for candidates. Ultimately, the school committee gets finalists, and the school committee conducts a second round with the candidates. The candidates are often invited to the community to meet with members of the community, meet with faculty members. A lot of the people who can't be on search committees are very happy to be involved at the late stage, where they can privately meet with candidates, interview candidates, mingle with candidates, to get some idea of how that's going, what they think of them. And then the school committee will conduct a very diligent interview and take plenty of time to pose thoughtful questions. Some districts bring candidates back twice. One of our districts actually brought back their finalists again to pose scenarios to them, make sure that the process was very transparent. And then the school committee will take a vote to begin negotiations and appoint someone subject to the successful negotiation of a mutually agreeable contract of employment. In other words, you don't appoint them until you've had a chance to negotiate a contract with them. Now, some people, if you've appointed them and then you begin negotiations, will say, well, you've appointed me, I'm driving the contract negotiations, as opposed to you're saying, we voted to commence negotiations with you. Those are usually productive and constructive negotiations. You will want to involve your school board attorney, and you will want to take a look at a model contract that we can provide to you as a member district, because you know that the candidate will get a different model contract from the Superintendent's Association, and it will look very different from the one you'll get from us. So your immediate goals will be to develop search criteria, decision criteria, and a compensation package. Make some decisions about the process you want to use, but you have the expectation, being the district that you are, of having a very successful process, drawing some very good candidates, and if you start at the beginning of the year, when the candidates are fresh, at this time of the year, remember the old Hills Brothers coffee commercials where the broker is there with all the good beans that he's giving to the Hills Brothers guy? And then somebody says, what about the rest of the beans? He said, well, we couldn't use them, I just gave them to somebody else. Sort of what happens at the end of the year when the good candidates are gone, and people are just waiting for next year to start up fresh. So I'll be happy to take any questions you have, or respond now or later if there's anything that you want.
That was great, thank you, really informative. Anybody have questions? It's a lot to digest right away. Libby?
Can we get a copy of the contract that the candidate will have? A sample contract?
I can give you a copy of our model contract.
Yeah.
Yes.
You
Yeah,
can
in
get a
fact.
model contract that the superintendents will give to the candidate?
I think. Excuse me. No, I mean it's right here. I can download it in your computer if you, or I can send it to
She
you.
needs the one that MASC has for its superintendents. Do you have access to
I
that?
think we can find that for
Okay.
you.
It would be good to look at both model
We have a guide to contracting that includes the model contract language and a list of all the different benefits that may be in a contract. There are, and the salary is just the part that everybody notices. There are many other parts of a superintendent's contract that, as Yogi Berra used to say, are just as good as cash. It's not money, but it's as good as cash. And that includes, we have the whole list of those things. And actually, if someone wants to send me just an email reminder when I get home tonight, I can send it to you electronically.
Okay. All right. Liza will do that.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any other questions?
Thank you.
That's great. Thank
Okay.
you so much,
Thank
Glenn.
you.
We appreciate you coming. All that information. Thank you.
I'd just like to add that, you know, we had 2 new members, and that's why we were very anxious to have Glenn come. The rest of the school committee's been, you know, working on this for a while, but it's good right at the beginning of our process that we're all on the same page and to have a good overview. So thank you, Glenn, for making the trip, and we have his notes here, so
That's great. So okay. Thank you so much again. All right. Next item 7.2, to receive the proposed memorandum of understanding with the Maintenance and Custodial Unit and act as appropriate. We have joining us tonight to help ratify the contract, if we vote, Mary Power from the Board of Selectmen. Yep, come on up, Mary, and take a seat. Sorry, I'm a little crowded in here. Does salary negotiations wanna?
yeah, I'll
Go
give just a summary, and John, you can fill in if you have anything more. So this is 3-year agreement. This is the 5th of our bargaining units for us to conclude agreements with them. The last one, the bus drivers and the custodians and the bus drivers, we had some delays on their end of getting started, which is the only reason that this has taken longer than the other ones. It's a 3-year agreement, and we agreed to 2% salary increase across the board for 3 years, as we had with the others. We also have added some stipends to encourage the staff to get specialty training and certification, which allows us then to have that expertise in-house and helps solve problems immediately, and also take care of some things, plumber, HVAC, instead of contracting out, contract outside when we have a greater need, but, and this is also an opportunity for them to grow in their careers. As part of mutual agreement, we added some vacation days for people who've been here more than 22 years of service, and then we're allowing some sick leave for family medical leave as well. We increased uniform allowances, just partly cost of living. Also, as with our other contracts with hourly paid employees, it will be a new time reporting requirement. We're having the electronic time reporting, and they were fine with adding that in. The civic rate of pay was increased. This is the hourly rate when we have outside groups using the facilities, so that is paid for by those outside groups. It's not our cost. And then we have a position in the high school who at the moment is not part of the union, and once that person is no longer working for us, that position will then come back into the union, so that was mutually agreed. And the middle school night supervisor stipend was increased because once the new middle school building was opened, and that's the timing of the new contract, it's recognized it's a much larger building than it was before, and so they're compensated appropriately. So that is where we are, and the increases came within the allowance budgeted as well. So, does anybody have?
Just to add a few more things there, Liza. On uniforms, the contract provides for, top 5 shirts, and that's to help also with the, identification of the staff throughout the school, because sometimes you cannot identify who is who. So that's a good thing. And additionally, this provides for timekeeping. There will be, what do you call, time clock.
The electronic time clock,
So we can sort of like, better monitor time.
And they can have their time better monitored to their benefit as well, so it's mutually beneficial time. Yeah. So,
Do you have anything, John, or?
No.
Okay.
okay, so I will make a motion to ratify the memorandum of agreement between the Hingham School Committee and the Hingham Public School Custodians and Maintenance Workers Association with a three-year period of July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2020.
Do you have a second?
I second.
Any discussion? I would just like to say that having been a volunteer oftentimes at the schools, the custodial staff at these schools is pretty amazing. I want to give them a shout out. I have seen them go above and beyond on many an occasion for students and parents and the faculty, so I'm glad to see this contract being ratified tonight. All right, so we had a motion, a second. Any other comments, questions? All right, roll call vote?
No?
Nope. All right, so the motion to accept the contract as presented?
Yeah. Of the memorandum of agreement.
Of the memorandum
as
of
we were
agreement?
Presented, yeah.
As presented? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Thank you very much, Salary Negotiations, for your work on that, and to the maintenance and custodial staff. Oh, I'm so sorry. All right. Item 7.3, to hold a public meeting and consider a resolution withdrawing from participation in the state school choice program for the school year 2018-2019. Dot, do you want to give any background, or do people comfortable
Sure.
with what you want to, okay.
Yeah, I did put some of the background information on the annotated agenda so you all could see it. This is an annual vote that we take. Oops, let me get rid of this, sorry. It goes back to the time of ed reform, so 25 years old. The school choice has been in place. We in this town, 25 years ago, was in the 1993, and well, it was that in every town, but in this town at that time we were in a period of growing enrollment and have been up until the last 2 years, growing at all levels, probably an average over that time of about 60 students per year. So there was never a thought that we had a sufficient space, and of course in 1993 was well before we had the 4th elementary that we now have, so we were really not just growing but really compromised in terms of particularly elementary spaces, and those were the years when we had, you know, up to, until East was built, 700 students at Plymouth River, for example, and all of our schools were crowded. So it was never a consideration that we would look to school choice, even though there's a financial incentive in that when you agree to be a school choice community, the dollars that the students in the districts in which they come represent, which was whatever their per pupil cost was a significant incentive. And there were many communities, particularly communities that were quite small and perhaps struggling to keep their own school system in their town, were looking for students to bring in dollars, and that left some other neighboring communities who were losing those dollars in a challenging place. And in this area, there was little interest in school choice for another reason, and that was a reason that was more a social, ethical, caring for one's neighbor's reason, and that is that in an area where you have some school districts that are strictly go-to districts, where parents perceive that there would be a better education for their children, that leaves the communities that they leave very much strapped for cash. It's a similar process to the financial aspect of what happens with charter school funding. So, so that would be another reason that people might be deterred. You do have to send a reason when you send your letter, which has to go in by June 1st. You have to give a reason. Our reason has always been about enrollment, because truly we thought that was where we were. Our elementary enrollment is beginning to decline for a couple of years, but we also are sitting on two very large projects that are in process. Certainly ground has broken off of Beale Street, and the construction is well underway on at the shipyard for the second Avalon project. And so we don't know right now, although we're hoping to have a better quantification of what the impact of those will be in terms of enrollment. But certainly, even as we're beginning to lose enrollment, it does not seem that this would be a good time to bring students in for school choice when we don't know what we're facing in terms of our future enrollment. So, so this is the time we have to make that decision, and the recommended resolution is to withdraw from school choice with a letter specifying particularly enrollment as the reason. It's interesting the way the law is written, because it's kind of backwards from what you would think. Instead of opting into school enrollment, we're opting school choice, we're opting out of it. But also it's written in an interesting way in that it says that while we have to give a reason for choosing not to participate, the reason cannot be challenged by DESC. So this year, DESC, every few years they change somewhat the protocols, and this year they're going to a new survey, which they want, we will still send the letter, but they want us to indicate in a survey that we are either choosing to participate or not, because what they are trying to do is to get the information from communities that will take school choice students out more easily to the greater public. So the average citizen could look to find in a fairly simple way where there are openings in which communities, and so they change a little bit how they want the information to come in, but in any event. That's the history, long time. Many communities benefit. I can think of one community fairly near the South Shore that is a very small community, and in fact about 50% of their students are students from another district, school choice district, and many of those students come from a larger nearby city. And so that has allowed them to maintain an independent school system, as opposed to having to, for example, get into an arrangement, a regional school district kind of an arrangement with any local community. That is the main example. I can think of only one near us that has accepted a large number of school choice students.
So Dr. Gal, just to clarify, up until about 5 years ago, we used to accept children of teachers, and we no longer do that?
We no longer do that, and that's a good point, Carlos. I want to mention METCO too with respect to this. So yes, we did. We had an unwritten agreement, nothing in writing in terms of the contract, but an unwritten agreement that we would accept students of teachers. And that went away. How many years ago, Liza? When you were
It was before I came on.
At least 4.
I think it's
And at
about
the time, we never had, and there really were a couple of reasons for that. One is that we had some citizens of the town who objected to that and did it in writing, letters, speaking at a meeting and so on. And their objection was based upon the fact that they, some said, for example, we've sacrificed a lot to buy a house and live in Hingham, and so why should a child of a teacher who lives in another town have that opportunity. We would always point to the fact that it was really flattering to our community, spoke to the quality of education that children of teachers would want them to be here. At the time we had, I believe it was 16 students in total. And 16 students over, 12 years of schooling wasn't a big impact at any one grade. Nevertheless, it was that number of students. The other thing that was happening at the time, however, is that we had almost a total turnover of our teacher population, and we had lots and lots of young families and lots of maternity leave and lots of potential for more students than we perhaps ever could manage, and that was certainly another factor. And so at that point, the school committee did take a vote to not enroll any new students, allow the students that were here, excuse me, to continue. I think this year we're down to maybe 6 students left of the original 16. I think some folks in our community were perhaps misinformed, thinking that we must have tons and tons and tons of these students, and in fact we never had any more than 16, and the average number that we had in any given year was about 12, so it wasn't a huge number, but the potential was there for it to grow with the number of young families that we had and young teachers. So that action was taken, and most of the students we had did stay until they graduated, and now we're to the point where most of them have moved on. But
are we getting, as the town of Hingham, getting money from their town of residence?
No, this is a totally different, this isn't school choice.
Okay.
This was just an agreement that we had, never written, with the Hingham Education Association. The other thing that became a challenge at some points, and you can imagine why this might happen, is that other members of our staff from time to time asked, well, what about our children? Could be a custodian, could be a bus driver, could be a paraeducator. And our agreement was always with the HEA, but it was not a written agreement. And over the years, there were times when it would come up in negotiations as to whether it should be a written agreement or not. It was never committed to being part of the contract. But it's sad that that happened. I do think it's great when we have children of our staff. On the other hand, being a practical person, the number of students that we would have at this point, unless we had some sort of a cap or first come, first served process or whatever it might be, would be a number that we couldn't sustain. So, but I also want to mention that school choice, when you're looking to count things like a number of minorities or other subcategories of students, that the METCO students are exempted from the way the school choice numbers work, and it says a desegregation plan, and that is what METCO was originally proposed to be, so that as we look at students, then the state does not count them as school choice students. The state has different funding for METCO students, obviously. It's a grant, actually, that's funded annually.
Any other questions from the committee or anyone in the audience with questions or comments? No? All right. We'll,
I'll make a motion.
okay.
I'll make a motion to withdraw Hingham Public Schools from participation in the state's school choice program for the 2018-2019 school year due to enrollment levels and space availability concerns.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any more discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? All right. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. All right. Item 7.4, to receive a recommendation to appoint the Student Services Director and act as appropriate.
Well, certainly I'm happy to make a recommendation tonight after a long and thorough process, we believe. We've narrowed down our 2 finalists last week after the visit on the Thursday the 17th, and many of you, thank you for participating in some way in that day and taking the opportunity to meet the two candidates. So I'm pleased to recommend, Jamie and I are pleased to recommend Dr. Suzanne Vinnes, who is from Brookline, as the next Student Services Director. And that would be pending negotiation of a contract. I did meet with Suzanne late this afternoon before this meeting. We discussed a template, if you will. She's going to take that home and look it over, and she will meet with me again next Thursday. In the meantime, I will share with members of the Salary Negotiations Committee the draft. What I did do was to take the template that was developed for our principalship candidates, and took as well the contract of the current Student Services Director, and where there were those common, mostly legal kinds of components of the contract, substituted the language that is in the new principals template there. There still is an addendum section where individual benefits could be placed, and there was actually a pretty good matchup. That there were almost everything that is in the student services one was in the principals one. You know, differences obviously in terms of salary, vacation days, those kinds of things. But so she will look particularly at those. Suzanne is a member of a Unit B contract where she is. She doesn't have an individual one, so she wants to look at this carefully and get some advice on it. But so we've taken at least the first step. But you know, I'm hoping that you will take a vote this evening. But it should be pending that negotiation of contracts, similar to what Glenn mentioned earlier.
Thank you.
And you have information just about all you could want to know about Suzanne, and the letter that recommends her that Jamie put together. And we're excited. And when she was here this afternoon, I thought last time we saw her was on Thursday, and she was nervous, and so she's very excited about coming here. And where we point out things like, well, we don't have quite the resources that Brookline has, she said, doesn't matter. Still excited about coming, so that's a good thing.
Oh, may I?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm pleased to just say that I heard from a few parents that they're very, very pleased with her credentials and skills. They truly believe that she'll be a great listener to the community, and that's one of the areas where they believe it's lacking. So that is a great thing.
I would say some of the things that helped us to make the decision were we had what we felt were two very, very capable people in terms of skills for the job, but it was always about the best match for here and for now, and Brookline certainly has a comparable population, both of students and parents, similar to what she would find here in Hingham. She's had experience at all of the levels of dealing with children with special needs, including the preschool and an out-of-district component, and a very large component of children on the autism spectrum. So comparable experience, and we had wonderful references, some unsolicited, some that were that she shared with us, and so. We think that she is the best candidate for our job for now, and that's really the most we can say about any candidate. It's what we need for here and now, and that's our recommendation.
Yeah, I would just like to add that I was able to serve on the search committee, and it was a pleasure to interview good candidates and then to narrow down, and I went to the session Thursday night with the parents, and it was a long discussion over which one is good, and we had two good choices, and that was, I thought, very positive for the community, and that it gave some good energy and good momentum going into this transition, that Carrie and Libby were there, and I think that that will be very positive, and it was a very productive discussion of frankness about what issues we want to solve, but the benefits of what Suzanne can bring to the table, and moving everyone forward. And I felt like everyone was on the same page of being behind of where we're going and excitement, and that's really positive, and that made me feel confident and very pleased with the thorough process that went through, and so I think she'll be a great addition to the team. Thank you for all the efforts to staff of searching her out.
And the official starting date would be July 1, so once we have a vote and a contract, the next thing that we need to be working at is the transition and how that's going to work. But confident that we'll have made a decision in time to allow for a very good transition.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that too, and thank everyone that was involved in the search. I went in the morning on Thursday and then in the evening, and was really impressed with both candidates. They were great. I think you made a great choice, and that's what I've been hearing from other parents too. So thank you for doing that. How are we going to manage the transition?
Well, we'll have to get both parties together, and typically her end of the year, she doesn't have a full year contract now, so she's part of a union that has additional days to the school year, but not a full year. So, we would look to see what opportunities she has for coming to our town even before the end of the school year. And then Liz's contract also goes through the June 30th, so there's a lot of time there. It's just getting people together and what things she can participate in now, and whether there are other people that we want to bring in as part of the transition too as a consideration. So we have some thoughts on that.
Okay. Sorry, did anybody in the audience want to make any comments or questions? Okay, great, thank you. Someone want to?
I'll make a motion to approve Dr. Gallo and Dr. Lavalaw's recommendation to appoint Dr. Suzanne Vinnis as the next Director of Student Services for Hingham Public Schools, assuming successful negotiation of a contract and salary.
Second.
Great, thank you. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
No opposed? Great, it is unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations to Dr. Viness and to us for a great start to our new Student Services Director. Item 7.5, to receive copies of the final NEASC report and letter from the fall 2017 accreditation visit at the high school.
Right. So of course the visit took place at the end of September last year, and it was a long time getting the final report. And having been a person who has a job and goes out to do accreditation visits, you get back and your life is complicated, and sometimes it takes longer to get the report here. But in any event, we knew several weeks ago that the Commission on Public Schools of the New England Association had met and had voted for our accreditation, so we certainly knew that was here. And as well, we had received a final copy of the report around that time. What we didn't have was the written letter, which we thought we should have before making things public. The written letter from the Commission affirming that we would be reaccredited, number one, and number two, that would tell something about the most immediate actions that we would have to take. And that actually came on the night of the last school committee meeting.
Yeah.
So we talked a bit about, the next couple of meetings through the end of the school year are really hectic and really busy, and this is a report that's important in the life of the school, and it's one that we should give some attention to in terms of a public presentation and not just making the information available. NEASC does have rules that the report has to be made public. We have a commission at NEASC that has private schools, and that commission doesn't have to follow these guidelines. So we talked about it a bit the other day. Michelle and Liza and I talked about the best way to handle this, and we determined that we need to put it out in the public because the commission says it should be publicly available. So it goes on the website. It will be sent a copy to the public library. We're talking about it this evening. So we're going to cover all of those bases about making the report public. But in the summer, and I've talked to Rick, and he likely is going to be away at the end of the summer with some personal family activities. But he would be available in July. That we publicize that we've received this, that it's a very positive report. There's nothing in it that I think would be a surprise to us at all. They were thorough. It's a well-written report. And so we still would like for Rick to do a presentation of the report, mainly focusing on the 7 standards areas and those kinds of ratings, and particularly the strengths. They mentioned many commendations, and also the number of recommendations, particularly those that we need to follow up on in a report that we have to submit next January, of a couple particular standards that we have to look at, and then there will be another report that will be due in 2 years, and what those things are. So that's the plan. I think it's a good one, because I think, you know, we don't want to have this be a 5-minute presentation and a very busy agenda of other things, and if we do it in the summer, one of the summer meetings, it can be more leisurely than as it needs to be and should be. So I'm not sure if anybody has a comment or a question about it. Certainly particular questions about the report that you want answered before there would be a presentation by Rick. Do contact Rick or me, and one of us can likely answer the questions. So we don't want anyone having questions go unanswered. But and we wanted you to have the report as well, to be able to read through before the presentation comes along, so that the questions can be answered at that point as well. So, or if anyone has questions about the process, it's essentially an every 10-year process, and there are revisiting points at years 2 and year 5, and at about year 7 we get notified to start up again, particularly looking at the mission and the expectations, and how we're going to review those, and even before the self-study, which is a 2-year period, starts. So while it's 10 years, there's a lot of action in each one of those 10 years to keep us all busy.
Yeah, so I did have one question, some other questions that I'll save for the formal presentation. But so when they got parent feedback in there, how are the parents recruited for that?
Typically, it's up to the principal to get parent feedback, but there are two things that happen. One is there's a survey that is the beginning of the self-study process.
Was that the Endicott survey that they talked about?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm. So there's that survey, and there's a component of that where parents have an opportunity to comment, students, school committee, and that data all comes back. And then the school, one of the first things the school needs to do is to look at the survey, react to it, and talk about and analyze it as to what it suggests that they need to do as they're going about the self-study. And so the data of that becomes public, and there are comments about it in the report itself.
Right.
So, but it is called the Endicott survey, and especially developed to align with the standards. So they're not simply asking questions about, well, how do you like the high school, or what's your favorite course, or things like that, but they're asking how the parent, the student, the school committee believes that the standards are aligned with the school's practice.
Did they talk to any parents during the visit?
Excuse me?
Did they talk to
yes, and also there are usually 2 opportunities during the site visit itself when the principal will have made an announcement, for example, to the parent community that the a committee is coming on a certain date, and that we're looking for people that would be available to come and meet with them. And usually there are 2 of those windows, if you will, during the process. So yes.
Thanks.
Maybe others would want this. Could we have Pam run a hard copy of the report
Sure.
so that
Mhm.
it's,
Yep.
I'd like to read it, but it's
Yeah,
long
it's
to
long
read
to
on
read
the
on it.
screen.
You're right. Yeah.
So,
Never
yeah.
Yes, we can.
So even if it's double-sided, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Any other questions on that, or we'll wait for the presentation? And just quickly, sorry, when have you already posted it to the website and sent it to, or that's happening?
We thought that you should see it first,
Okay.
but then we're
Thank
ready
you.
to do that
Perfect.
tomorrow.
Okay, great. Thank you. Congratulations to the high school team and everyone else who helped with that. It was a very long process, I think, a year in the
Yeah,
making.
it
Well,
is.
9 years in the making, right? Because
Mhm.
it comes
Well,
every
and
10
as someone
years.
who
But
conducts these visits, I always say it isn't the site visit that's the most important part, it's the self-study that's the most important part, because that's when the school gets together in committees and looks at itself first. And then the visiting team comes to look at the work of the self-study. Self-study is definitely looking at yourself and making plans to change things. And some of the comments you'll find in this report, when they comment, they will compliment the school's perceptiveness, if you will, or the plans that they've made already to take care of certain things. And often in these kinds of things that the team might have discovered in the self-study will already be in the process of remediation or improvement.
all right, thank you so much. Item 7.6, to hear an update on the fiscal year 19 budget with recommended changes that align proposed spending with the appropriated 2018 town meeting figures of $52,006,697 operating and $1,023,962 capital, and act as appropriate.
All right, so if you have one sheet that we handed out this evening, because we had a different sheet that we put in the packet on Friday, but we've had a change even since then. So the one that you handed out tonight is the most accurate one, and actually shows the gap that had existed as is now being closed. At the last school committee meeting, I think we had a gap of something like negative $20,000, something in
That
the
was
neighborhood.
what was in the packet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So we've had some changes since then, and if you look at the top of the sheet that you have that says Hingham Public Schools budget reduction tracking on it, you can see the history. The other side of the sheet has shows that at the time of the at the time of the town meeting, the advisory committee, the selectmen, and the school committee were all at the same number, which was 52,006,697. So next, if you look on the reverse side, at the top left corner, our target was that 52 million figure. That was a percentage increase over the current year budget, FY18 budget of 4.51%. And so the chart below that shows all of the reductions that we have made to the originally proposed budget. And they're all in this chart, and they almost all relate to personnel changes. Some of those were personnel changes that simply occurred, and we were able to reduce the bottom line without taking any of the things that were asked for out of the budget. But later in the process, we, in order to meet that target, we had to actually reduce some things from the budget in order to get where we needed to be. But if you look at the date column, where it says date noted, these are the dates when we took those various reductions, and some of them were actual school committee budget hearings where we could start to do that, and some of them were later as we moved toward town meeting. So if you look down to the column that has the reductions that occurred post town meeting, So there's a 4:30, April 30th, another April 30th, and then two that were last week and one that occurred over the weekend. So I think when the teacher retirement on 4:30 was an unanticipated teacher retirement, and then the additional vocational school acceptance, which was somebody that simply moved here and was accepted at a vocational school. Those we talked about at the last meeting. And so one of those was a positive in the sense that it allowed us to reduce the budget because we'd be hiring someone at a lower salary, and the other one was a greater obligation that we had, so that cost us dollars that we hadn't anticipated costing. But the most recent reductions were reducing the extra kindergarten teacher that we had put in the budget because we don't need it based upon our enrollment. We talked about that at the last meeting. So that was a $68,000 amount. The principal overlap there is something that we've known about for a while but couldn't quantify until we actually hired a candidate and knew what the obligation was for the new candidate in terms of salary and the overlap. So Debbie's will be here physically, but not at the Foster School building until the end of August, and that has to do with her retirement planning. So we knew that, but until we had assigned a salary to the new person, we couldn't quantify what that would mean. So that amount of money there for principal overlap was, of course, a negative because it would come out of next year's budget because it's the period between July 1 and the late August date that we have for her. However, a good piece of news is that something I mentioned earlier this evening, and that is that when we look at the kindergarten enrollment, even though it's lower than we had anticipated it might be, the revenue that is resulting from this year's kindergarten class, this year, meaning starting in September, kindergarten class exceeds what we had put in there as an offset. So that was then a positive of $34,000, which brought us to being able to close that budget and actually be in the black, if you will, by up now in the corner of the top, $13,356. So that's where we are, and we're thinking that that's not that big an amount of money, and in fact, two of our newest hires, one for an AP chemistry teacher and one for a psychologist chair, coming in at a budget figure that was beyond what we projected they might. But we're just beginning the hiring, and so that will balance out, we hope, over time. But we're not suggesting that we go back to the list and think that we have to spend that $13,000 because with the hiring just beginning, that would be an iffy move at this point. So that's where we are. John is looking at other places where there might be some savings, in particular gas, cost of gas for the district and for the town actually, because that's something that another individual used to handle, and now likely John is going to be doing that. So there may be some additional savings that come along, but these are savings that we're confident in, and we think we have a budget that we can live within, and appreciate everyone's efforts along the way to coming to that point collaboratively. And so we would propose that this is the budget that we will now work on getting into print, and a budget book and all of those things that go along as well. I've also asked that John have a financial summary, end of year summary projection for us at the next meeting, to see where we are with respect to this year's budget and what kind of a closeout we anticipate there, and whether or not there might be any action that we want to take as a result of that information.
Okay. Great.
John, did you have anything to add?
No, I've just had, I mean, I know we're in a very tight budget year. 18 is gonna be very, very tight, so I wouldn't, there won't be a lot of money. What we've calculated right now, we're a little negative, but that's okay this time of year, because there will be some POs that drop off, but, we'll have a good report for you on the 4th.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any questions about that?
Okay. And we don't need a vote, because we have a vote.
Yeah.
We're
Right.
just confirming that we can make it.
Perfect. It's always good like that. All right, 7.7, everybody brought their calendars, to consider the administration's recommended summer meeting dates of July 23rd and August 20th. What do we think? Does that work for everybody? Or does it work for enough of us? Is my new motto.
I can't do the July 23rd. I could do the August 20th,
Okay.
but I always think I miss one meeting, and it's always during the summer.
That's okay. You go. Yes, that's okay. Is everyone else good with those open?
I can do the July, but not the August.
So Libby, no, August. All right. Anyone else?
I can
at
do
this
both.
point? You can do both. Okay, Carlos.
I'm not sure where I will be tomorrow.
All right, we're gonna gamble.
July
that
and
you're gonna be
August is
here.
far away.
We're gonna say you're
As right now,
definite
yes.
maybe. Okay.
As right now, yes.
Okay. Ed, how about you?
Either one.
Either one? You're good for both? Okay. Kay's not good for one. Are you good for both?
I think so.
Okay.
As of right now, I am.
All right.
And typically
Carlos's
during the
schedule.
summer, we have our meetings at 7. Is that still your?
I would say 7 o'clock is good for the 2 summer meetings. Is that okay for others? Carlos, yeah? Yeah? Okay, so, yes, I just realized my son's leaving for school a couple days after that. But yes, so I think July 23rd and August 20th, 7 p.m. We'll go with that.
And the other thing I would mention, kind of related to setting dates, is the fact that we have the last several years anyway had an administrative retreat in usually July, and it's a full day that we spend at a site off-site. And last year the school committee did join us for a piece of that day. We're in the process of finalizing the date. We're down to 2 dates, both in July, and so if it is in the interest of the school committee to participate again, we're happy to invite you to a piece of that day. So you can let me know on that, because we're narrowing down the date, and then as soon as we know what that is, we would issue you a formal invitation, but just a heads up to think about.
I found it very helpful last year too. I think it would be
I
great.
thought so too. I thought
Sure,
that
we
was
can
really
find
good.
something to talk to them all about.
Great, thank you.
All right.
All right, 7.8, to receive notification of the retirement of Karin Herman, Executive Assistant to the Assistant Superintendent, effective July
And
31st.
Karen's
I
gonna have a
know,
minute.
Jamie,
I'm gonna
what
have
are
a
you gonna
minute.
do? We're gonna give
And
Jamie
Karen
a
is,
moment.
a wonderful administrative assistant, but it's not just that. She has a history. She's our most senior support staff member, and so
She's
we're going to
leaving.
miss her for lots and lots of reasons. So that will be a tough one to fill. It's been posted, and Jamie's anxious to get going on making a selection, and with good reason. So.
Yes, yes, she will definitely be missed. And thank you, Karen, for all your service all these years. 7.9, to receive notification of the resignations of Elizabeth Bensten, Plymouth River School teacher, and Kristin Schreiber, Hingham Middle School science teacher, both effective at the end of the school year. Yes, so thank you both again, and best of luck in your retirement. Item 8, any other items as may not reasonably be known, 48 hours, anybody? No? All right. We can move along to subcommittee and project reports. Do we want to go, let's go in order of folks, if that's,
Yeah.
All right, so do you want to do?
So
doing
for
goals committee for
salary
science.
negotiations, so first thing, Michelle, Carlos, and I were talking about dates for when we could meet to go over the proposals from the search consultants, and we came to next week. They both have graduates, so busy week for them. So we were looking at June 4th to meet just before our school committee meeting. Probably we can do it in an hour, or on June 5th to have a separate meeting in the evening. So we wanted to check with everyone because their plan was to have salary negotiations chair the meeting and make it open to the full school committee. Is there one day better for people, just so we get participation?
Just so you know, Liza, long range is meeting on the 5th.
Oh, okay.
From 4:30 to 6 p.m.
Oh.
So if we do meet, it would have to be after 6 p.m.
Yep.
on the 5th.
Yes. I would have to do it after 6 p.m., so that works out good. But does, so, is there a preference for either one?
It was June 5th and
June
4th and
4th.
5th. So 4th we have a school committee meeting at 7:30, so it would be
Yeah.
6:30, or the 5th, but you.
5th would be better.
5th would be better.
6 to 7. How long do you think it's going to be?
I don't think it's gonna be more than
We are here.
an
Yeah.
hour.
June
Oh, actually, 6 to 7 would actually be good for me.
6 or 7?
6 to 7
Does that work for
on June
people?
5th?
On the 5th or the 4th?
The 5th.
The 5th.
The 5th, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah?
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so June 5th it is, 6 to 7 p.m. All right. Great, thank you. So what are the two meetings?
And then, I know we have to, schedule other things for salary negotiations with you, so maybe, depending on what they are, maybe we can do something half an hour after that or something
Yeah.
like that. Okay. Then, the other thing I had for everyone was, we had agreed that tonight we would look at the criteria for screening the proposals and then, interview questions once we pick them. So what I did was in your packet, item 9.1, I used the information that we had at the last meeting and I made it a little more cohesive. And then I also included the checklist of everything we asked for in the letter that was sent to requesting the proposal, just so that, so we can at least check it off and know that, like, whether they submitted it or not and make some notes on it. So, that's what I'm proposing. I'm totally open to suggestions of, what, if there's something people want to add, subtract, change.
I just had a question.
Yeah.
One of the criteria was placements in communities similar to Hingham.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Like, how do we decide what that looks like? A community similar to Hingham? Would that be the DOC website or our 20 benchmark towns, or like what would that?
I think it would be, I don't have specific criteria, but it's more of the tone of, is it size of community, economic level, suburban versus urban, Eastern Massachusetts versus Western Massachusetts. So it's a judgment call, but it is, are they only placing people in the Berkshires versus all around here? So that's what that was driving at.
Okay, great.
But it wasn't a specific list of, because even our benchmark towns, they're not all similar to Hingham.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and if we want to clarify that, or if everyone understands that is the thought process, yeah, that's, so are we good with the criteria? Okay, so then the other document I gave you in the next one, 9.2, I combined everything into a broad chart so that if people wanted to make your own notes of who we received proposals from, and then consolidate your information across them, that I thought that would be a good way of people consolidating your thoughts. And I guess when I was going through this, I knew I wanted to do it for myself, so I figured I'd share it for everybody. John, any comments?
No.
Okay. And then 9.3 is some interview thoughts, and I based this chart on what we've used for the interview process with candidates. So this is a list of interview questions that we can then, before we go into the interviews, on the 5th we could tweak this too, or after what Glenn Koocher told us tonight, if we want.
He said that they have sample questions that have.
That's for when you're interviewing the superintendent candidates, as opposed to the consultant.
The search.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So these were all very based on what you saw before. I just flushed them into questions. Any feedback?
Looks good.
Thoughts? Okay. Okay, so after the meeting tonight, I have all of the proposals in a Google folder, and I will share it with everyone. And I got one set of hard copies came in the mail because I was having some email transfer problems, but the document did come in, so you'll get a hard copy from one of them in addition to the electronic. And they're all labeled self-explanatory. The only thing I did was I renamed one of them to make sure that it was self-explanatory, but I haven't looked at any of them yet. So, so look at them, please, keep them just to us, and then we'll talk about it on June 5th, and that'll be a publicly posted meeting. And the goal is to narrow it down to 2 to interview, or possibly 3. So that's where we are.
Will that be televised?
No, that would not be televised.
Okay, but it'll take place here at the school department.
Yeah, we'll confirm that the room's not being used on June 5th.
Okay.
So, yeah. Okay.
All right.
That's all I had.
Great, thank you. Okay, do you have anything for community outreach and or policy?
So policy, we've kind of came to we finalized the SPURT policy, and right now we're kind of updating the whole policy manual. We just need to find a date to meet next. I don't think there's any urgency for policy right now to meet.
Well, there is one thing that happened recently. I wouldn't call it urgent, but something we need to take care of. There is a law that was passed that has to do with school resource offices. And so it gives a lot of requirements in terms of how they need to function, and says, for example, that we have to have a memorandum of agreement. Well, we have that fairly recently revised, but there are some things in this section of this new law that we do need to look at and see whether or not our memorandum of agreement complies. I haven't seen regulations as often happens when a law is passed. The DESE is asked to put together regulations. I haven't seen anything like that yet, and I didn't see it in the law itself. But it's quite a comprehensive law, and really has to do with a lot of things that, you know, are going on around us. And some of those things have to do with security and safety, and some of them have to do with certain kinds of incidents that occur in schools and how those need to be treated in terms of investigation and those sorts of things. But that's fairly recent. The information just came along, and the letter that came from the association describing that we needed to look at this law called it a sleeper section of the law that you perhaps wouldn't even think had to do with school resource officers. So I have sent a copy to Glenn, and so I don't think it's urgent, but the law has passed, and we haven't heard anything from that from DESE, for example. Which we normally do.
So would a meeting in June be?
Oh, sure. I don't really think it's
Okay.
urgent. The law has
Well, then I'll
just recently
send
passed. But
some
it's something to
suggested
look at.
dates to our new committee,
Mhm.
formed committee.
It would be interesting to see how it compares, because
Yeah.
Glenn gave us the document that
Right.
he refers to from all state
Yeah.
school resource officers to
Right.
do our memorandum of agreement. So
Yeah.
if it's different, it would be kind of
Mhm.
surprising from
Mhm.
the law that was adopted.
Right.
So-
But as I say, this is really a part of a law, the topic of which is something else.
Yeah.
And this is a section of it that has to do with school resource officers. So I wouldn't be surprised that it has taken a lot of people by surprise.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, we didn't have any role in that kind of thing.
Could you send us all the citation? Could you send us all the citation for the new law?
Yes.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
will.
All right, thanks. Anything for community outreach, Kay?
So we have dates for the community and parent group forums for following up from our survey.
Okay.
And we have a location, so has that been posted to the website yet? I know an email's going out.
Not yet. We'll do that tomorrow.
So there's, I think, 80 community members and parents that are signed up for these focus groups, and there will be an email sent out. Obviously, people can still join the focus groups if they want to, so if you didn't sign up to attend a focus group at the time you took the survey, you can still go to our website, look at the dates, and let us know that you want to participate. I'm sure there's an RSVP.
There isn't. Alexa was sending it out to the 80, and
Right.
they gave us the link to post to the website for additional. The only thing that we're still waiting on is the logistics relative to the student forums.
Right.
The times identified, I need to consult with the high school first. I doubt we can pull groups of kids out at 11 a.m. just to sit in a focus group. So they will likely reschedule with Alexa for some after school times and have it be optional to the students who want to participate.
How much time do you need for the focus group?
They're giving an hour. I don't know what the topics of discussion would be or how the conversation would flow. And they had them scheduled. Again, cleaning up email, glanced at it quickly, so those dates work. And then upon reflection and booking today with Kay and Alexa, the 3 student groups were slightly problematic relative to their scheduling in the middle of the day at 11, 12, and 1. That I just want to make sure that we check with the high school, have space available for them there, as opposed to having, like, I can't have kids come here for a focus group at 11 in the morning, right? So it just requires a little more logistical work, but I'll get in touch with Alexa. I was waiting for Karin, my assistant, to get back tomorrow, my right hand, to help out with that, so. But we'll get to that nailed down, probably by tomorrow.
And the 2 dates are Wednesday, May 30th and Thursday, June 7th, and there's various times on each day. And if a school committee member wants to attend one of the focus groups, feel free to sign up for any one of those.
And they're really every hour on the hour, starting
Yeah,
at like 8:30 or
right.
9, all the way to the evening, so.
All right, great, thank you.
And I did also give Libby and Carrie the packet of the discovery phase and what that kind of encompasses, and what we expect to receive also from Stacker when they're done with the discovery phase. and we'll set up I think after these focus groups, we'll set up a date to meet. And again, I don't know when the student one will take place.
We'll probably hold them in the same time period. I just want to make sure that we schedule it at such a time that it makes sense for the
Right.
high schoolers.
Good, thank you. Ed or Carlos, long-range planning, anything?
So long range, we'll be meeting, as you heard, on the 5th, from 4:30 to 6 p.m. And John, anything you want to add to it?
No, I think, that's it really, to set the plan going for fiscal 19, what we're gonna look at and follow up on some projects that we've got in process. So I think it's good timing, and, it'll be a good agenda. I think we'll get a lot accomplished.
I guess that's me, special ed.
Yeah.
We have not had a meeting in a bit, but I was thinking, Liza and Carrie, how would you feel about meeting right before the CPAC meetings? Would that work for you?
Yeah.
I just feel like it's a sort of monthly meeting. We're already there, and I think it's June 10th. Is that, sorry, Tim?
13th.
13th?
The library?
Yeah, June 13th, CPAC meeting?
I believe so, let me check. Yeah,
6, yeah.
Yeah, 6 p.m.?
So it's 6 p.m.?
Okay. And then I'd like, if we can, to maybe sort of make that our regular scheduled meetings.
That works.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What was it, June?
June 13th.
Thank you.
And we'll just jump in on the library too.
Okay. Sounds good.
I did reach out at the last CPAC meeting about a date for CPAC to give their report here.
I think we were planning on doing that on the meeting on June 18th.
Okay. I'll put that on the list.
Great. Thank
Is
you.
the gentleman the new president?
Assistant Superintendent.
Yeah, acting chair of CPAC.
Thank you for introducing yourself, and welcome.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. You're welcome. Any liaison reports? I actually went to the middle school school council meeting today as my last meeting there, and I told them that Libby would be taking my spot, and they were very happy, pleased to hear that. So they're looking forward to that. It was a great meeting. They did a report on the summer reading book for the all-school book, which I will not give away because the kids do not know yet. And they talked a lot about the Title I summer programming that they're doing at the middle school, which is some really great reading and math programs they have going on this summer, as well as an executive functioning program a few days before the school for kids to come in and tour the school, check out where their locker is, meet some of the teachers, some of the staff, meet the secretaries in the office, the nurses. So it'll be I think it's a good start for them. And that was all I had for liaisons. Anyone else?
So my last
Not
meeting
here.
at Foster will be the 30th at 9:30 a.m. Liza, if you wanted to join, actually 9:50. 9:50 on the 30th. You're welcome to join us. And then I have as part of the legislative liaison.
Yes, thank you.
If you want
Yeah.
to talk about it, you want.
Yeah, let's do that next since you're up. So let's do your.
All right. So let's test
Suggested.
this to everyone. And we can test this on. I think I have enough to go all the way across.
Oh. Thank you.
So you all received, as part of the package, the legislative bulletin. You also got that perhaps mailed to your homes. When I received this, I actually, prior to that, I received an email of the Lowell City Council had passed a resolution supporting the Senate Way and Means recommendation of the foundation budget review. So MASC, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, it's sort of like, accepting resolutions from school committees. As a matter of fact, over 50 school committees have joined in, sending resolutions. This is just, goes on to, send a message to our legislatures and to the governors. One is thanking the legislators, and then also, putting a little pressure so the governor can go forward with this. Just, May 10th, the Senate unanimously passed, a bipartisan recommendation. Pushing for over 3% increase on the foundation budget review. So that's it's 3%, $3 billion, over $3 billion. So this is something that has not happened in several years. So with that, I thought it would be the right moment, as we have been throughout the year, lobbying our legislators to provide, us with more money, and also to support the, the reform on the budget. So finally, it's coming to a place where, it could move forward. It's up to the governor to either vote in favor, veto, or amend. And I think it is time sensitive that we sort of send in our voice through a resolution. So with that, I work with Liza. As a matter of fact, I couldn't print the copy of the resolution. She was kind enough to print a copy for me. And you have that in front of you. Essentially, what we would not recreate anything new. We would sort of just replace the name to our name, Hingham School Committee, and try to adopt this tonight if it is possible. And I would actually recommend that we do vote on this, because as I said, it's time sensitive, so would be appreciated. But before I read this, anyone else wanted to say anything?
Yeah, I'll just add that, it was a couple years ago that the Foundation Budget Review Commission made their recommendation, and the legislature hasn't done anything about it. And then just recently, the Senate did act unanimously to make the recommendation to move forward on the recommendation of changing the funding formula from the Foundation Budget Review Commission. They didn't assign dollars to it yet, because that is the big challenge, but finally the Senate said, we need to start talking about this and we need to tackle this. And the House has not done anything about it yet, even though there was a bill, but it didn't get voted on, and the governor hasn't taken any action either. So it is time sensitive, and it is calling some attention to the House and the governor to let's look at this formula. And I've seen that, Lowell, Brockton, and Worcester are getting ready to file a lawsuit against the state, which was also what started ed reform in 1993. So it's happening.
So what's the date that this needs to be finalized by? Because usually we don't vote on things that are first reading.
I know that the House and the governor, I don't know if they'll readdress it, but it would be all probably part of the budget process, which goes through June 30th. So usually they go into July of finalizing a budget. But it is coming up quick.
So we could vote on this at our next meeting?
Was that June 4th?
Mm-hmm.
I guess we could, if people feel more comfortable. It doesn't give us a lot of time to, Carlos, what's the process after if we approved it?
Essentially is, we will notify the Massachusetts Association of School Committees that we have indeed joined them, as part of this. It is a good PR for Hingham, for our school, that we are actually, this is one of the things that we keep talking about, that we need more money, we need to actually advocate for the formula to change. Obviously, Republicans and Democrats came together at the state level and are pushing this collectively. So it's the sooner the better. Obviously, you know, it's 2 weeks from now, the next meeting. But I don't want to put any pressure on anyone. If people are comfortable in voting, fine. But you know, this is something that I would suppose we overwhelmingly would vote in favor, because there's no harm at all. You know what I mean? Unless some people don't agree with any particular item, which is they did not address anything that's that's sensitive here. I actually was very careful in looking at it, and you know, if you look, the newsletter that we got actually addressed several items, and they're not really calling for, you know, pinpoint those items. They just sort of like, you know, saying overall, you know, we support this. So if you know, my colleagues you know, like to vote on this tonight, I think would be great. I would appreciate it, but if you can't.
The thing is we just received this right now, and I haven't even had a chance to read through it. I actually, in the agenda, was kind of noted that it's on the MASC website. I spent, I think, a half an hour looking for it and could not find it, because I wanted to be prepared for what was going to be presented tonight.
Yeah, and I did find this by going through the MASC Facebook page
I
to
looked
find
everywhere,
the link, so it was hard to find them.
Yeah.
I think this school committee would be well advised and well positioned to support this resolution, but I question our position on the employee health insurance, because the City Council of the City of Lowell, which has now been replaced by HSC, is advocating for two things here.
No, it's not the City of Lowell, it's that the Foundation Budget Review Commission found that the current formula understates.
And they're commenting on two significant areas, understates the cost significantly in two areas.
Right.
Special education, as well as employee health insurance.
Right.
I'm not I wonder if that's our preview.
I think that is a challenge, and when I
Maybe
was
it
on a long-term state committee under Governor Patrick a number of years ago, that was a real stumbling block to us, because of the fact that health insurance is paid for by communities at very different rates. And so Hingham is a 50-50 community. There are other communities around us that may be 90-10, which means the district pays 90 and the teachers pay 10, or 70-30 or whatever. In many of those communities, those percentages have come down somewhat in recent negotiations, but it still is a fact that many of the issues that some of the needier communities have are related to higher co-pays. So I agree with that it's different from asking for dollars to fund more appropriately special needs students or ELL programs or those kinds of things. And so
this resolution is about the formula, though. It's not
Right.
about asking for more money
Exactly.
for health
Yeah.
insurance. So that's
Right.
that's one thing, and it's just about modernizing it, which they were trying to do years ago. So I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm willing to vote on it tonight, but
It's and it's the way health insurance costs were calculated 25 years ago. Of their part of the formula, 25 years ago, employee health insurance costs were valued at a very different rate than they are now. So it does apply to all communities are paying a different rate than they were 25 years ago for it. So it's not like hard dollars, but it's how the formula is calculated, which is a very complicated formula, but like the weighting of how employee health insurance was included in the way the state calculated the amount of reimbursement was very different than it is now.
There's also a third that's totally broad, understates the true cost of educating students in the Commonwealth. That's just, in general, the formula fails everybody across the board. I'm ready to vote on it. I don't even, you know, it shows that we're paying attention. We're listening. We want a resolution, and we want it now. Move now, please.
Yeah, so
Let's do something.
54 communities, so it's nothing really that would harm us, or, I mean, obviously, the governor reserves the right to veto or amend or do whatever he chooses to do.
Right.
But it is our voice being heard at the Hill, and join our fellow school committee members elsewhere.
Right. Do you want to take 3 minutes to read it, and because I think, or have people read it, because we did just get it.
I know, so I'm still kind
Yeah.
of
So do you want
making
to
sure
take
that
3 minutes, just read it to yourselves, see if there's anything that jumps out at you that you don't like, and then we could consider taking a motion.
And just, Kay, the newsletter that we have here is actually much, much clearer.
No, I have it.
Okay.
I received it. I didn't receive this until now.
I'm a fast reader. No, it's not. I'm not doing that. All right, pencils down, everybody. Say, it could have been a teacher. All right, I think everybody read through it. What are you thinking, Kay and Ed?
There's one sentence that bothers me. Otherwise, I think it's fine. It's the investing in education today leads to higher incomes and thus less investment in police, prisons, subsidized healthcare, low-income housing, welfare, etc. in the future. I'm not really sure where they're getting those. It's not very factual. It's more of just kind of a blanket statement, and I just don't. And what are they basing that statement on or off of? Like, what facts are they using to back that up? So everything else to me looks fine. I appreciate the thoughts behind it,
Okay.
what we're trying to achieve here.
Yeah.
And in good faith, Kay, with that, because like I said, it's just a message that we're trying to send.
No, I understand.
So with that, in good faith, I'm willing to strike that whole paragraph out. If
It's not the whole paragraph, just that
if
one
everyone is in,
sentence.
yeah, but, yeah, I understand.
I don't think it need, yeah, we don't need.
Doesn't
I don't
matter.
think it offers anything, in all honesty,
Right.
but everything else from just.
No, that's fine. Do I need to read out loud?
I was gonna say, do other people have questions, comments, anything they wanna put in, take out, other than that one section? And if that's the only thing, then yes, read it out loud without that section. So read out loud what we're potentially going to vote on approving.
Resolution. The Hingham School Committee wishes to be recorded in support of the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Commission relative to funding the Foundation Budget Chapter 70. The Foundation Budget Review Commission, known as FBRC, was established by legislative in the fiscal year 2016 budget and was charged with examining the Foundation Budget Chapter 70 formula, and the formula was first established as part of the education reform legislation in 1993 and has not been thoroughly reviewed or updated since that time. And the FBRC found that the current formula understates costs significantly in two areas: employee health insurance and special education. And the Massachusetts Foundation budget significantly understates the true cost of educating students in the Commonwealth and has failed to keep pace with rising costs. And this underfunding means the cost of providing a quality education has increasingly been borne by local communities, most often at the expenses of other vital municipal operations. And state and local economies are most effectively strengthened by investing in education and increasing the number of well-educated workers. Therefore, be resolved by the Hingham School Committee as follows: that we, the members of the Hingham School Committee, request the Massachusetts legislature and the Governor of Massachusetts to fully fund and adopt the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Commissions in the immediately future. This resolution is adopted by a vote of the school committee, Hingham School Committee, on this, whatever day, 21st day of May of 2018. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So is there a motion to accept the resolution?
I move. Go ahead,
Well,
please.
you move, I'll second.
No, go ahead, please.
I move to pass the resolution to encourage the governor and who are we encouraging here?
Legislature.
Massachusetts legislature to adopt the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Commission immediately.
I second.
Second, all right, any discussion? Ed?
I question the precedent of voting on a recommendation on an immediate presentation. That's a precedent setter in my experience.
Okay.
Just a comment.
I'm
Yep.
going to agree with Ed.
Okay.
It's been a policy of this committee to always have a first reading and then take a vote at a later meeting. As much as I do support what's being presented here tonight, I do fear that we are setting a precedent.
Yeah, I could understand it. So is it a policy, being new to the policy committee, I do not know that.
Well, we did discuss at our last meeting that we might need some kind of policy on resolutions.
Right.
We have stuck with that, especially in the past 5 or so years of 4 or 5. We have been pretty vigilant about not introducing something at the same meeting to vote on and having a first reading and voting at the second meeting.
Reason too.
Dr. Geller, would you, at least for my benefit, explain the timing on this again?
Well, I'm not sure the timing is clear, because there's a long process that needs to happen. My concern, not about the wording of the resolution, I think having a resolution is fine, was where are we right now today in that process in terms of what has been voted, and then where are we in the process of the amendments. I think that's where we are now in terms of amendments being discussed and voted. And then the governor would have, I think, 10 days to decide what action he wanted to take. And if in fact there were vetoes, then there would be a period of time when the legislature could consider those. So I'm not sure about where we are in that timing. I would suggest that whatever it is you decide to do about the resolution tonight, that certainly I'm comfortable as an individual notifying our legislatures, and I think we all would be well served to do that so that we don't miss the opportunity to inform people that, not in such a general way as this, but our legislative team, that, you know, we want to encourage their action as apart from this. Because I honestly don't know where we are and what got voted today or what happened today. I know last week we had a couple of calls to say, you know, call your legislature today because they're voting today on, I think it was mostly amendments last week. So I think those who are so moved should contact our team at least, or any members of the legislature or the whole legislature to act on this.
Well, I guess my question is, do we miss the train if we put this off to June 4th? And it doesn't seem as if there's a real
Yeah, I think we know.
Urgency.
It doesn't seem as if there's no way to answer that.
So I think that my thought would be, being the second time I'm sitting in this chair, I don't want to be the one to be changing years of precedents on voting on things first. And I guess we can add to our policy list of things to do this year is coming up with some things about resolutions, because sometimes they do need to move quickly. So so we can maybe think about that as part of policy. So I think I would.
Madam
Yes.
Chair.
Yes.
The motion has been made, has
Yes.
been seconded.
Well,
Yep.
I'll make a motion.
Discussion.
So, wait.
Discussion has taken place.
Yeah.
And with all due respect to my colleagues, their comments is due notice and can be reflected on the minutes. But the motion has been made, it's been seconded. I'll call for a vote.
Could I add to the discussion before?
Sure, please.
I would be comfortable with if we held off on actually voting on this, but encouraging Carlos to notify the legislators, because it's really our state reps right now that we brought this up and that we're discussing it and we're getting ready to vote it at our next meeting, so that in the interim, that if something happens, they're aware of our interest. But in order to maintain our own policies and how we operate, because I do feel that when we're given something, right, you know, we didn't even get it in our packet, that to start, and we don't know what the urgency is. Like, if we knew that tomorrow there was going to be we knew that there was a vote tomorrow, I guess in that case I'd feel one way. But I wouldn't I would support the idea of Carlos as our legislative liaison of reaching out to them tomorrow and letting them know that we're getting ready to do this.
So, in fact, I have done that already.
Yeah.
And I just met with Sonia, Senator Sonia
Right.
Diaz. So I have been actually on my own,
Right.
you know, legislating
Yeah.
and lobbying
Yeah.
for more money, but, you know, in thanking them.
Yeah.
But, you know, one individual in the school committee is different than the whole body.
Oh, I
Right, well, and
agree
as-
with that.
Right, so, and as part of the discussion, that's what I was about to say, that I was going to ask if you would, as our legislative liaison, to let the legislators know that we have discussed it and is our plan to have a vote potentially at the next meeting, and for us each individually to, if we agree that the FRBC needs to be adjusted and that we want the governor and the state legislature to review and take the recommendations of the committee, that we can do that individually until our next meeting.
Can I just get some clarification on something? So it was my understanding that a policy is something that's in writing and was voted on by the school committee, is that right?
You mean
So,
policy?
do we have a policy about not voting on things in the first reading?
We
Like
have,
an actual
we have a
policy?
policy about policy.
Not being
We
right.
don't have a policy about resolutions.
Okay.
So that's what the discussion is about and we have a practice of when something's put before us to do a first reading and then at the next meeting to vote on something as much as possible, just so that it's, fully aired, contemplated, the public could comment, that type of thing.
So a resolution, I would object actually for the school committee trying to create policy and what and when to present a resolution, because resolution is a freedom of speech. A member of the committee can bring that resolution, and then the chair may or may not, hear.
Right.
But I mean, obviously, I want to be very careful about also start creating policy about what and when to accept a resolution in the future. Now, I'm not saying that I disagree that this, the time should be given for individuals to read and understand what they're voting on. But I thought that we just did that, and in the good faith, when Kay did bring up a paragraph, I actually didn't have a problem removing, so we, in good faith, moved forward.
Right.
So now we are going to, not vote because, there's perhaps a policy of not approving something in the first reading. Yes, and yes, it is correct that the policy that has been on the books for quite a while, that we bring before the committee, we have the first meeting, we discuss it, we wanted to make sure it's right. This is actually a language that we're taking from another body that has passed. And we clearly say it's just a statement. There's nothing to it, right? Now, if we have any doubt about what's in here, and are we really setting a precedent by voting on this? There is no such a thing for a resolution. I mean, the chair actually is in charge of any meetings that we're doing here. It is with your permission that we speak. We don't speak out of order. So you actually have the right to, next time one of us present a resolution, say that you're not going to accept, you're not going to hear. And that's that.
Yes.
I think we need to be very careful with our words. I approve of the message, but I just want to have the time to sleep on it, give it some more thought. Maybe there's something that's missing before we take a vote. I think it's a good practice that has been done over the last, I don't know how many years this school board has existed, and so I'm just quite cautious with making any immediate changes. This was not in our packet. I could not find it on the website, even though I did in good faith try to find it. So, and I haven't heard tonight a reason or of urgency that we need to take a vote tonight. I am not against the resolution. Would like to make a motion to move a vote to the next meeting of June 4th.
I'd second that.
Oh, I need an amendment to the original motion that Libby made to.
So who makes the amendment? Me? I'd like to
I
make a
think
motion to
the
amend.
motion was fine. She voted to table it. She made a motion to table this till the next meeting. That, just the way she said it.
Okay, but I have another motion.
Seconded by Ed.
This supersedes the amendment will supersede the original motion. You vote on the amendment, yea or nay. And then if.
Okay,
And then,
so that was the
depending upon how
amendment.
that
I
votes,
made a
then you go
motion
to that one.
to vote on the resolution that was presented at our next meeting of June 4th.
Isn't Carlos's motion on the floor?
It's Libby's motion on the floor.
Carlos's motion is on the table. Kay is offering an amendment. So you vote on the amendment, yea or nay, depending upon how it's voted, then you go back to the original motion.
I didn't hear the word amendment, I just heard.
I did not either, but
Okay,
you are
I'm happy
amending.
to
All right.
amend my motion, and my motion is that to amend the resolution, or the previous motion
Yeah.
of voting on the resolution presented on June 4th at our next meeting.
Okay. And is that
I second.
yay? And you seconded. All right. And is that a roll call or is that
No, just
a regular?
Yeah.
All right. So all in favor of Kay's amended motion to postpone the voting of this resolution to our next meeting on June 4th. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Not there yet.
Eyes first.
Yeah,
One,
nay.
two.
Those opposed?
Nay.
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 Boy, Jamie's counting the
I've got
ayes.
3 and 3. So
Yes,
Michelle,
you
where were
do.
you? Sorry.
Yes, you do. Sorry, I'm the tiebreaker. I'm going to vote to, I know, sorry. I want to be respectful of precedent, but since it's not a policy per se, then I would like to vote on, then I'm voting nay on the amended motion.
No, Carlos moved the question, and that just ends discussion.
That's it. So now you go back to vote
Right.
on the
On the
first
original
motion.
motion.
Right.
No,
So,
he wants to move the motion which ends discussion.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Correct.
okay,
So it sounds like, so that
For the record.
we should vote on that.
right.
So now we're voting on his.
Yeah. So I made that motion to end discussion
Okay.
on the amendment.
Yes, okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, so we revert back to
He'll
the.
repeat
Then we
his
vote now.
motion.
Yes. So you want to repeat your motion? Or actually, it was Libby's motion.
It was Libby's.
Should I repeat it?
Well, you don't have to repeat.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't have to
As
repeat
as
it.
previously stated.
As previously
As
Made
previously
a
stated.
motion to accept this.
And I second.
Okay,
I think
so now all in favor of the passing the resolution?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes. Great. Thank you, everyone. Very much.
So, we want this to be, prepared tomorrow, and it will go to,
There is an email right on that email we got from MASC with the name of the person.
on this thing here?
I can forward that to you right now.
We need-
Yeah,
Okay.
right, go up. All the way up.
All right,
No,
so,
I'll send it to you right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
all right, any other liaisons, reports, CPAC, SNAP? No? Okay.
Oh, actually, SNAP
Yep.
cocktail party on June 1st.
June 1st.
Yeah. At the South Shore Country Club, 6 to 9. Yeah.
Great. June 1st. Yes. Tim
I
Dennis.
just got an email that the library room is unavailable, so the CPAC meeting will probably be here and not at the library
Ah.
next month.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. That is good to know.
Not that I was checking my email.
No. All right, well, if there are no other subcommittee and project reports, thank you everyone for your time, your engagement, and I will adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion to
Oh,
adjourn.
sorry, thank you.
Second.
Meeting adjourned.